Alright guys, welcome to the video. So today what I'm working on is a Ps4 Slim. This is brought in as described by it has no sign of life. So when you plug in the power to the power supply, it does nothing, so it's completely dead. They've also mentioned that they've replaced the power supply, 2 power supplies, and still they haven't had success. So this video will show you how to test a power supply and to see if you're actually getting the 5 volts as well as the 12 volt rail for the PlayStation to work on. It'll be very short, very simple. This is partially disassembled anyway. So we'll go ahead and remove this cover here. And then we will remove the power supply. Obviously there's screws here and here. I don't have them because I've gone ahead and removed them. So this just comes off. There's a connector here. Comes on. There's the power supply. And the power supply number is that one there. I think so. This is the slim model. And I'll show you how to test this. So it's very easy. And then I'll take this the motherboard out of here. So I've been working on this, so it's just partially disassembled anyway. So there we go, there's the motherboard, and I think this is the SAD 002 motherboard. Okay, so we'll move this out of the way. So what you need is, you need this cable here, which is from the power supply to the motherboard. So this connects over here, okay, and then this one connects on this side, right? So that's how it sits. Obviously that prong there sits inside of that, and then now what we'll do is we'll firstly identify what these wires actually do. So if you are getting your 5 volts, the problem with this one is that it doesn't actually turn on at all. And obviously the common thing there, what most people do is replace the power supply, but I'll have to work on this to figure out why it's not turning on. But regardless, this is just going to show you how to test the power supply. So what we'll do is, this is just the power button and the eject button that comes at the front of the PlayStation. So that's just there. So let me plug some power into that. Okay, so there we go. Grab my power. Let's turn that on. Alright, so that's there. And then what I'm going to do is I have, so if I position you guys here and then zoom you in, okay, yep, so I'm just going to be working on this connector here, and the way I'm going to do that is, let me flip this over. Okay, so I'll show you this section first and then I'll show you the other bit. There's my multimeter. Okay, so there's my multimeter. Let's put that over there. Okay, and then I'm just going to grab my test leads, and then they will just go into the output socket to the PlayStation. Okay, that's good there. And let's turn this on to volts. Okay, obviously there's nothing there. And then I have my switch here. No light, no nothing, it's dead. Okay, so that's that. There's nothing on the meter that's plugged in. 0.002 is just probably just the capacitor that's taking charge there. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I will remove my prongs from here. So automatically, because the PlayStation is not turning on, most people will be like, oh look, you know, it's the power supply, but how do you test it? Any one of these traces here is ground. Okay, so any one of these ground. So what I do is I just place my negative test probe there. You can see that. Yep, and then I will take my positive from my multimeter, and then I will just probe on this side just to see what I get. So I've got my 5 volts there, and then the next pin is nothing, the next one there is nothing, and then the last one there is 5 volts as well. So you've got your 5 volts, but still the PlayStation doesn't turn on, the power supply is still not on. You press your probes over there, pressing here, nothing. Okay, so there's no change, no nothing. So now what you do is you want to determine if this is good. Okay, so there's no like, okay, well, I need to test this, for those that are willing to learn and willing to test. So what we do is we place our probes there, and we look at this connector here now. So if I can zoom you guys in, try to get the multimeter in focus as well. So I've got my test leads again. So we know that this pin here and this pin here are my 5 volts, right? So now I need to find out which one's my ground, and the way I do that is I will disconnect my connector from here, and I will put my meter on the continuity scale. I put my probe here, I touch on the first line, there's nothing. Second line gives me a continuous beep, third one is nothing, fourth one nothing. So I know that my third line here is my ground. Okay, so we know that now that this is my 5 volts, this is my ground, this is at the moment nothing, and this is my 5 volts. So what this second pin does here from this side, so 1, 2, is this is what triggers the power supply to come on, right? So when you press the button from here, this sends the signal to the chipset, and then that tells to turn this power supply on, and let's go from there. I'll explain that in a later video. And now, so how do you test this? So what is the process of testing this? And the way I show this is I've disconnected that. So because I know that that's my, okay, hang on, let me zoom you in so you can see. Okay, so because I know that's my 5 volts, that's my ground, that's my trigger line now, and that's my 5 volts, so this is the trigger, so the trigger comes in from there. So either it will be a positive or a negative trigger to turn this on. I'm pretty sure it uses a positive. So now what we'll do is I will grab I'll grab some pins actually. So okay, no, actually, so what we'll do is I have my, I'll grab this board out of the way so you can see. Okay, here we go. So these are the power supply. Yep. Okay, and then because the connector went that way, you don't want to go those two, right? You want to go these two here. So now I'll place my probes on here. Oops, change that to that. Okay, so let's place my probes into that. Yeah, and obviously there's power coming in. And now what I do is I don't think my tweezers will fit in there, but let's have a look. Okay, so it does. Alright, so now what you do is you need your 5 volts and you need your trigger line. Yeah, so what you do is just grab a pair of tweezers. If you don't, you could always just use one of these needles and just probe that in there. And then what you do is go there. So what I'm doing is those 2 pins, yeah. And what I'm doing is just inserting my tweezer in there, and you can see that my meter is showing 12.05, so that means this power supply is good. Yeah. that's only showing 12.5 is because negative 12.5 is because my test probes are other way around. So I'll just rotate them, yeah, and then now you see it's gone that way. Alright, so that's how you do it. So that's how you test this power supply is good. So now I know that the power supply is in good working condition. Obviously that's in a good working condition because there's no load on it, right? So if I was to connect something in this line here, that would tell me how much current it's drawing and so forth. But for now, that's enough to tell me that the problem is not on there. The problem is actually on the board somewhere, yeah? So that's just a short and simple video to show you how to test the power supply and to determine if it is the power supply that's at fault or not. So just to recap, just a little summary. Remember we checked this connector, we looked at it like that was on inside the board like that, and then we identified that this was our 5 volts, we identified that this was our ground, this was our trigger line, which is your AC detect, and then this one here is your 5 volts as well. So either it needs a negative or a positive to turn on. You can always use a 220 ohm resistor to turn that on, but this is sufficient enough. And so yeah, so that's your meter there. It's just discharging, and then to turn it back on to test that is just to short these 2 terminals out. And there you go. So that's just a short and simple video to show you how to test a power supply, if it's working or not on a Ps4 Slim. Now if the power supply is smelling like it's burning or something like that prior to you doing this, then obviously leave it alone. Just grab yourself another power supply, but that should show some people out there that it's an easier way of testing power supply rather than spending money and going and getting 2 power supplies or 3 power supplies. That is not necessary. Hopefully this video has helped somebody out there, and thank you for watching.